Right, so the latest news to come out in the tragic killing of 7 World Central Kitchen aid workers, amongst whom were 3 Britons, targeted as their 3 vehicles in turn were, which rules out any accidental targeting as was initially claimed, is that the UK appears to be at least in part responsible for supplying the means of their deaths. We're not talking about the missiles used here, but the drone that was carrying them. The missiles this drone can use can come from a variety of places and a variety of manufacturers, but the drone used, now confirmed to have been a Hermes 450 drone, is manufactured by Elbit Systems, and the engine used in this drone is only produced here in the UK, as far as we know. So as so many of us feared could be the case, that our own arms and our own military aid to the Israeli regime could be used against our own people, so this now appears to have been proven. We need an arms embargo now, and those still seeking to shut Elbit Systems down are now more justified in their cause than ever they already were before. Right, so complicity between the UK government and the UK arms industry. I'm sure you'll not be surprised to hear it, but with the UK supplying arms to Israel because the government permit it, and the arms manufacturers here making a lot of money out of it, now we know with certainty that this collusion between big business in the arms trade and the Tory government has, it would appear, led to the deaths of those 3 British aid workers working for World Central Kitchen, along with their 4 foreign national colleagues, including the Palestinian driver, because the drone strike that killed them came from a drone whose engine apparently is built here in the UK by Elbit Systems, or one of their subsidiaries. The drone in question is the Hermes 450, which is manufactured by Elbit Systems, who have factories not only here in the UK, but around the world, across 51 other countries in fact, so the drone itself could have been built in any number of these. But the engine the drone's powered by, the R902W Wankel engine, no sniggering at the back please, according to a report by the Canary, is manufactured by an Elbit subsidiary company called UAV Engines Limited, and they are based in Shenstone in the West Midlands. Now, where the Canary article itself sounds very sure of itself in this regard, Middle East Eye a little bit more cautious in their coverage, having approached both Elbit Systems and UAV Engines Limited for comment, and neither apparently choosing to respond to them. However, I did reference Elbit Systems having spoken to the Daily Mail, of all rags, instead, it would appear, saying that none of its subsidiaries or joint ventures, including UAV Engines Limited, were involved in the Hermes 450 programme. Well, that's a fascinating little bit of insight, because I'm very curious as to why the Hermes 450 drone is showcased on Elbit Systems' own website, in which case, not involved in the programme, what's it doing there then? However, the issue surrounding the engine used in these drones has apparently been a mystery going back for over a decade. Here's what Middle East Eye have just published on this. Campaigners say the question of the engine has baffled them at least as far back as 2009. That January, as the Israeli military bombarded Gaza, Amnesty UK said it had uncovered evidence that the specially designed engines propelling drones used by Israeli forces to target airstrikes might have been made by UEL in the UK. At the time, Elbit denied the allegations, saying that the engines manufactured in the UK were given to Britain for its drone programme and other international customers, but were not used by the Israeli military. A month later, government arms-controlled officials admitted that in the absence of physical checks on exported motors, they were unsure whether UK-made engines had been fitted to Hermes 450 drones used by Israel in Gaza. Ollie Sprague, Military Security and Police Programming Director at Amnesty International UK, who was one of the researchers looking at the drones at the time, said he's long wondered whether he and others had the full story. I've been waiting patiently for one of these things to fall out of the sky and for someone to pull the engine out and say, that's made in Britain, he said. UEL, UAV Engines Limited, have been owned by Elbit reportedly since 1995, meaning that the Israeli company also has the specific patents and knowledge to build the engine, Sprague said. Is there a connection to the UK? Yes, clearly, because the engine system on it is of UK origin and design, he said. Whether they were physically manufactured and exported from the UK and put in the drones is the question. So the crux of this matter isn't so much over whether the engine is manufactured in the UK, but that it is of UK design. It has been acquired by Elbit Systems, who are an Israeli-based manufacturer and permitted to operate and acquire properties here in the UK. And we're supposed to believe that tech developed here that they've acquired isn't being used in Israeli interests now? The suspicion has spelt out by Ollie Sprague of Amnesty International further in the article, is that the engines now being used will probably have been built in Israel, but using plans acquired from the acquisition of UAV Engines Limited. Backing up that thinking is the fact that researchers have not found much in the way of export licenses from UAV Engines Limited to Israel, making it look even more to be the case Israel are now producing British-designed engines for their drones. UK designs now being used against the UK, against UK personnel trying to deliver aid, which is something that should never have happened. A foreign arms manufacturer being allowed to acquire a UK company, now using what it has bought against people from the state they secured it from. In another way, you can argue these aid workers were killed by rampant runaway sell anything that isn't nailed down capitalism, in which case. But why is it the case that even British military assets or products produced in line with that be allowed to be secured by foreign states? Does national security only exist to be a convenient excuse and not matter in reality? Or is Israel an exception to that rule as it seems to be an exception to everything else? A thought that occurred to me here is at what point do these engines actually expire once they've been manufactured? How long might Israel have had actual British-made ones on their warehouse shelves that might have been shoved into one of these drones? And could they still be using them now, having been supplied some time ago? No matter which way you look at it, though, allowing Elbit to purchase this technology has led to this incident. And how many more deaths besides now? The UK is complicit in the deaths of these aid workers, whether that be directly or indirectly. Complicity is now nailed on. The UK government, Sunak's rabid Tories, already tearing themselves apart, are again under pressure to ban arms sales anyway, as they are clearly being used with genocidal intent. This is just yet one more example. The Israeli regime is out of control, and although the US supply the bulk of armaments to that regime, we have no control over what they choose to do. But we can do something ourselves now, albeit already far too late. But it could mean something. It would mean something to suspend arms sales now with immediate effect, something they should have already done under international humanitarian law, where there is a clear risk such arms could be used to violate said laws. But this again brings us back to the legal advice that the government have received on these matters, and which they are still refusing to publish, but which Foreign Affairs Select Committee Chair Alicia Kearns revealed at a private fundraiser, the audio of that exchange captured and put onto social media, where she was saying the government has received legal advice that international law has been violated. That should have meant weapons sales to Israel ceased with immediate effect, but that audio dates back to the 13th of March. So for weeks now, since then, the government would appear to have kept supplying arms when they should have ceased already. And if the Foreign Secretary has known about this and kept quiet, the Conservative Friend of Israel member and unelected appointee to that government post of Foreign Secretary, David Cameron, has knowingly put that aside, then his resignation is required and nothing less will do. Full details of that story in this video recommendation here. I'll hopefully catch you in the next vid. Cheers, folks.